Late Age Rahga Dual Kingdom. Rahga is a dual kingdom of fire and ice, rage and serenity. Half of the population are Abyssian descendants from the isolated colony of Tur, and half the population are Aryan refugees from Caelum. Tur was a distant and prosperous Abyssian colony founded after the successful military campaign against the giants of Ashad. But the war with Ashad had been taxing, and the colony was cut off from the kingdom by an Archocephalian campaign through the fertile lands previously conquered by the giants. For centuries, Tur was left alone, an independent kingdom formed. Then came the Caelans. A great host of ice-clad warriors descended upon the Turan armies on the plains of Rahga in the mid of winter. The Turan realized that Tur could not stand up against the Caelans for long. Tur was on the brink of destruction when the attacks suddenly stopped. Civil war had broken out in Caelum, and the campaign was aborted. Instead, Caelum refugees and deserters settled on the plains of Rahga. Aryan serfs approached the Turan and peace was negotiated. When the Harab serfs of Caelum attacked, the Aryans were saved by the Griffin Riders of Tur. This sealed the truce, and a strange alliance was formed. Rahga is now a society of two people united out of necessity. During winter, the Aryans reign, and during summer, the Turans reign. Even faith has evolved to mimic the legacy of the two people. Two different groups of beings are adored and worshipped, but this is starting to change. The one true God has arisen. The peoples of Rahga suffered less from heat and cold than other nations. For national features, as a race, we have flying cold resistant, we have heat resistant, and we do not suffer as much from heat or cold. I believe this translates into we get half as much penalty from heat or cold scales for supplies and income. So we can actually take those scales a little higher and not have nearly as many problems as you otherwise would. And that's kind of an important mechanic for this nation. For military, we have flying units and we have Griffin Riders. Really could use an update here. We also have some cavalry, including pretty darn heavy cavalry, and infantry, including pretty heavy infantry. For magic, we are good at air, water, astral, fire, and we have a bit of death and blood. Our priests are average, but we have guardian spirits. That's the random chance to get those little guardian spirits. They're fine. They have like priest levels and some astral, but in all my test games, I haven't even had one spawn. I definitely know they can, but they're not super duper common, unfortunately. Our temples are expensive, but generate fire gems, and boy, howdy are those expensive. For scales and blesses, we have a turmoil limit of +1, not particularly useful in all honesty. Buildings, we build standard forts. That means we build citadels in this era. Our temples cost 1,200 gold, so double price, but you do get a fire gem out of them. Overall, pretty decent set here. It's a shame on the turmoil limit because generally speaking, I think we are both resource and recruitment point capped. So we would really have preferred probably order 2, which we can kind of sort of get via pretender pick, but this isn't helpful, frankly. For sites, we have 2. We have Lake Urmia. This gives us the recruitment of ice-clad Zeadans. Gives us a air gem, a water gem, and an astral pearl. And we have the Mountain of Ever-Burning Caverns. This gives us our Zeadan Spabed and our Zeadans, along with a fire gem. Overall, decent income, very interesting sacreds that have a little bit of a twist to them that we'll talk about here in a second. Units and sacreds. We have a pretty decent lineup here, actually. We have very useful troops, maybe a little bit of redundancy, but not horrifically so. First up, we have the Python. This is our equivalent of a militia unit. This is one of the Abyssian type troops. 8 gold, 9 resources, 3 recruitment points. They have better than human stats. These are going to be like the human bred as their actual race from the Abyssians. So good HP, a little extra strength. Overall, all right, little extra magic resistance. Morale's a little low. They're not well trained. These have fire resistance 10, wasteland survival, mountain survival, and have some dark vision. These guys are wielding a spear, have a ringmail cuirass, an iron cap, and a shield. So overall, I don't love spears. At least this one's 14 instead of 13 piercing damage, but overall not particularly useful. Next up, we have the area archer. Weirdly enough, these are okay, and I'll talk about why. 10 gold, 7 resources, 9 recruitment points. They are the area chassis, which is a little bit worse than humans physically, have better magic resistance, have 15 cold resist and flying. These are wielding an ice knife, which is a magic weapon, good to see, a leather halberd, and a composite bow. Normally, I'm not in love with anything that's not a crossbow, and we don't get crossbows, unfortunately. But we have pretty good access to air and fire, so we're pretty good at buffing archers, and the fire arrows will definitely work. There's another unit that we're going to look at that also has a composite bow that I think kind of makes us want to lean into that route. As a composite bow wielder, we could do something like a loose formation, fire enemy archers, and I think that's not terrible. That would keep the, hopefully, crossbows of the enemy firing relatively inefficiently into us, while we have a relatively efficient fire into them with our 12 precision here, which equals 13 on the composite bow. So pretty accurate, could be pretty darn nice. Area light infantry. These have an ice lance, so it is a magic weapon, but only 12 piercing. Yes, it's a lance. Yes, you are a flying unit, so you will get one good hit, but then that kind of wears out. The other problem is we are wearing ice-studded armor, which means we get this ice armor trait, meaning if we're in heat or cold, we get a bonus or penalty to our armor. So if you're in heat 1, our protection, which is already kind of garbage, 10 on the body, would go down to 9 on the body. Not particularly great. Next up, we have the area infantry. Same guy, but he has an ice blade instead of the lance. I do prefer the ice blade with the 11 attack and 14 magic damage. 14's not that magic 16 number, but it is magical, so I'll give it that. Let's pause here for a second. So one of the things about this nation, we are supposed to be the dual kingdom. Some of our units will be able to be recruited or not be recruited based on the temperature. Mostly that's stuff up here in our sacreds. But this is going to trickle down here, because if you go with a heat Rahga, you're not really going to want to be using ice armor. It's just going to be absolutely terrible. Let's just add a -2 to this protection, let's say if you were heat 2. So these guys can be useful. The heat cold thing doesn't really matter for the archers, but for these two units, if you go heat, I don't think you're going to see a lot of use on these. If you do go cold, then that's also going to change, well, cold or heat. That's going to change which sacred we can get. So just kind of keep that in mind, especially for these two. If you're not cold, I don't think I would get these. Maybe if you're fighting somebody that has big cold domain, but even then, I don't know. Then what happens when you win the war and then you just have a bunch of these guys left over, whereas the heat neutral guys wouldn't have that problem. So I don't know. I'm a little torn on those ones. Next up, we have the first Turin infantry. This is I would say this is like a light troop in late age, weirdly, with his 13 protection, which is 12 body, 18 on the head. I don't hate these. Again, they're those human-bred Abyssian type chassis, so better than human stats. You get a broadsword, a javelin, chainmail cuirass, half helmet, and a shield. He has the standard Abyssian traits here, so the fire resistance, wasteland survival, mountain survival, and dark vision. He has 17 damage with that broadsword, which is great. That's exactly what I want in a line troop. The javelins I don't love in late age. 13 piercing is not good. At least they have 11 strength, so a little extra range, a little extra damage. I don't actually hate these. I wouldn't purposely pick these a lot. I mean, 19 resources for this is quite expensive when we could do something else. But I don't hate these. These are okay. Let's look at something even better, though. Turin heavy infantry. Turin heavy infantry is 13 gold, 22 resources, 10 recruitment points. Again, those much better than human stats, and this is a well-trained troop, so they're even better stats. Broadsword is now up to 18 damage, and we still have the 15 body, 18 head. Very nice line troop. I would just not, it's a little on the low side in armor, but a little higher on the damage. That's fine. I like these quite a bit. I definitely think these could do work for you as a line troop, but I also think we have other options. So I do prefer this over the lighter one. 22 resources here versus 19 there. I will pay 3 resources to get rid of the javelin, just that alone, much less any of the other stat changes. So I like these guys quite a bit. Next, we move into the beginning of some of our cavalry. We have the Turin horse archer. This is a light-ish horse archer. I don't know if I love these. They don't have a lance. They have a spear instead. Composite bow, ring mail, cuirass, half helmet, and a buckler. I probably would not get these. If you did, you could do something maybe like fire and keep distance archers or something, just to be a distraction or an annoyance. I'm not in love with those ones. The Turin cavalry, same thing, but now we've moved up to a plate cuirass and a half helmet. The horse itself is wearing light scale barding, so that's not the worst. but same problem. Crossbows are just gonna get these guys. They're a little too light to be protected from that. They do at least have a light lance, so there is some capability for maybe like a hold attack rear thing. Notice they are not mobile archers, so they're not going to be firing this composite bow on the way in. I do think it's a shame for both of these lighter ones not to have mobile archer. That would make them a lot more useful in my opinion. Next up, we have the Savaran Cataphract. Pretty good. It is a Cataphract unit. Saying that though, the Cataphract barding of these guys is only 15 protection, 21 on the head. That's fine. Do note that the horse itself is fire resistant 5 in addition to being an animal. And for an animal, it actually has 7 magic resistance, which is a little higher than normal. The rider himself has a full lance, a broadsword, and a composite bow. In this case, I actually wish they didn't have the composite bow, because what's going to happen is they're going to run up, they're going to lance somebody and kill them, and if there's nobody else left in melee, they're going to spend a round or two shooting their bow, whereas I would prefer that they just charged into melee. So a little bit of a shame that they have that here. I kind of wish this specific one did not. But otherwise, he's fine. You see here, 15 on the body, 21 on the head. Pretty decent cavalry unit, I would say. Next, we have the Savaran Guards. I like these a lot. 60 gold, 50 resources, 47 recruitment points. The riders have 15 HP, 12 strength, 12 attack, 14 defense. Pretty darn good. Good morale. They have the Abyssian stats. These are also bodyguards. Same equipment as the last one. For offense, lance, broadsword, composite bow. Armor-wise, they have the Turin plate mail, full helmet, and a shield. This actually gives them 20 on the body and 21 on the head, plus the shield. I like that a lot. This is a nice, heavy cavalry unit that's not super duper expensive. It's about average, I would say. The horse himself has the same cataphract barding as what we just looked at. Why do I like these guys more? Well, with these guys, what I actually kind of like is the idea of we're going to do the hold and fire command, which will hold them in place to be buffed. We have astral access, we have fire access, we have air access, so we could body ethereal, mist form, we could give them aim, we could give them fire arrows, we could give them fury, all kinds of good attacks. We could buff the mounts with some of the mount spells if we got some nature magic. Overall, I like these quite a bit. Behind them, I would put ideally some independent crossbows, but we could use our composite bowmen too. We could also put them nice and close together if we're not worried about enemy archers. Or even if we are, we could give them air shields or protection from arrows. But the reason we would group them up is we could give them all fire arrows and aim relatively easily. And when the enemy does get to us, they're going to eat that full lance damage to the face. For whatever reason, you don't actually have to move to get your lance damage bonus with your 28 combat speed. So that will be a nice lance hit on the initial clash. If that, between the fire that you've done and that doesn't already rout the enemy, then you switch over to your 13 attack, which could be buffed, 18 slashing damage. Again, all the buffs that could apply to that too, and you just chop things up. Then when they start retreating, or people who are not in melee combat will keep firing their bow into combat. And 9 precision is not the best, but you'll be firing at like point blank range anyway. So I actually find these really good. They are expensive for both resources and recruitment points, but I think you get what you pay for in this instance. We have the Turin Elephant Rider. I am not in love with Elephant expansion. Some people swear by it. I always tend to find that more often than not, I end up doing more harm to myself than I otherwise would. But as far as elephants go, these aren't the worst. These have 18 protection on body and head. That's actually like heavy levels, so that's pretty decent. They have 2 spearmen and a driver on top. It's fine. If you like elephants, here you go. We could maybe later on mistform them. A mistformed elephant with having that much protection would be pretty hard to get rid of if we look at the elephant himself. 18 on both. Give that mistform, maybe give that gift of flight. That would be really hard to deal with. So these are okay. I'm just not the biggest fan of the elephants. In theory, I love them, but in practicality, I don't generally see much use. The other problem here, 99 resources, 34 recruitment points, 105 gold. Stupidly expensive. That is really hard. Even your best forts probably only get up to maybe 5 of these per turn, maybe 6, and that's going to be pushing it. We do not have anybody that has like special resource bonuses or anything, so it's going to be hard to get these out in any real numbers. Okay, next we have our 2 sacreds. I mentioned this before, but You can only get these sacreds in the proper temperature scale. You have to have a cold scale to get the ice-clad Xeadens, and you have to have a heat scale to get the Xeadens. If you're in neutral scales, you get neither. So that is a little bit of a problem. With the ice ones, again, you would really want to be going cold 2, or maybe even take a dragon for cold 3 if you were going to go that route. These are fine. 19 gold, 40 resources, 21 recruitment points. They have these slightly worse than human stats, although this is a well-trained unit. They have that ice armor, and it's ice armor 2. So in cold 3, that would add 6 extra protection. But in cold 2, let's say, you'd have -4. If you subtract 4 off of this, now we're down to 13 protection. That's not good enough. And it's going to be really rough to use these to expand in year 1 before you can spread your scales. I'm not the biggest fan of these, if I'm being honest. They also have an Ice Lance that only does 12 damage. So yeah, you'll probably kill somebody on that initial hit, but then you have 12 damage. And 12 damage is just not going to cut it in late age. So I don't actually like these guys that much. I'll use them if I got them, but I'm not in love. The Xeadens, on the other hand, this is our heat unit. These are better, but these are a lot nerfed from Dom 5. One of the reasons being we cost 2 sacred points to be able to recruit these. So even if you're at 10 Dominion, the highest you can go, you could only get 5 of them. That's a pretty darn big nerf from where they used to be. In addition, with the split of Rider and Mount, we actually suffer a lot less, I think, than a lot of other cavalry units did, but I think it does still hurt here. The Rider himself has a lance and a broadsword. Pretty darn nice. You're going to probably kill almost anything you hit with that lance on the charge, and then your broadsword's perfectly fine for getting kills. He is wearing the Turin plate mail, a full helmet, and a shield, giving him 20 on the body, 21 on the head, plus the shield effect. Great. In addition, the Griffin himself is size 8. Remember, you struggle to hit riders when they're on top of tall creatures. I won't go deeper in that mechanic, but just know that your rider's a little safer than he might otherwise seem. The mount themselves, though, tends to get himself killed. He only has 14 body and head armor and 7 natural protection, but it's a decent mount. It's flying, of course, has talons and a beak, which are both good, decent enough attacks. I like these quite a bit. So between the Rider and this guy, you're getting 3 attacks per round. Good, solid, high skill, high damage attacks. I like them quite a lot. The mount does not have fire resistance. I want to call that out specifically here. The Rider has 15, but the mount has none. So if you're going to start throwing a lot of fire around, you may want to try to fire resistance buff these guys before they fly in. Also, hilariously enough, these are smart mounts that are stupid. So that's just kind of a funny combination. Stupid actually can be kind of useful. They'll stay on the field when their rider dies, whereas they probably should be retreating, which can kind of hold you on the field longer than you otherwise should be. That can be funny. They also have wasteland survival, mountain survival. The smart mount means they'll probably go back to your capital if the rider gets killed, giving you a half-price recruit to get the next guy. Overall, I definitely prefer the Xeadens over the Ice-clad Xeadens by a large margin. So that means I do prefer the heat. Now, do keep in mind, depending on which temperature scale you go, it's going to turn on or off some of our leadership. So that can be a bit annoying. Also, I will call out, if you set up something to recruit and then the temperature scales change, it will cancel your recruitment. So keep an eye on that, especially in the early game where you think you're getting something and like your temperature scale changed, you in turn and miss out on a lot of resources that you should have been able to spend. Heroes, Commanders, and Prophet. For heroes, we have the Father Slayer. Kind of interesting. He breaks us solidly into blood with blood 3. He's a priest level 1. He himself has regeneration, fire resist, poison resist, wasteland, mountain survival. He's a glutton. He pop kills 20, is a blood searcher, and is unsurroundable. He's got snakes growing out of his shoulders, essentially. Overall, I like this guy. If when I get him, I generally do a little bit of light blood hunt with him, and just to make a few light blood items, some imps to up your research, maybe a flesh carver axe for some thuggy stuff, just some things like that. Nothing too crazy there. I don't think we're gonna become a major blood nation or anything, but it's there. It's there. He's all right. Moving into Commander's Proffer, we have the Area Scout. This is a great scout. Unfortunately, he's 13 resources, so can't be the best scouts in the game, but they're fine. They have good map move because they are flyers. They have some equipment. That's kind of whatever. It's just nice to have flying scouts. Next, we have the Python Salar. This is the basic leader for us. 50 gold, 18 resources, 1 recruitment point. Unfortunately, only 75 leadership. They themselves have 10 fire resist, wasteland survival, mountain survival, and dark vision. Fine gear. They're fine. Generally speaking, I like to have leaders that can give me formations, especially in late age where we don't want to be sitting in blocks to get cross bolted. So he's fine. I'm not in love with that. Next, we have the area Spaffbed. This is their basic area leader. Again, same problem with the 75 leadership. He is wearing the ice gear, which does include an ice sword, which is a 16 slashing magic damage weapon. That's okay. Maybe in a specific circumstance, having that magic weapon would be rather nice. If you go cold, obviously, this is a much better unit. The Turin Spabed. This is the cavalry leader, and a leader I like quite a bit. 100 leadership, of course, has the same stats we've been seeing over and over again. The warhorse has that fire resistance, 150 gold, 47 resources, 1 recruitment point. 18 map move is fine. I like these a lot. This is generally my first pick for non-flying leaders because of the 100 leadership. Area Shah. This is the base priest for these guys. 75 leadership, priest level 1, sacred of course, cold resistance flying, and has ice armor. These are fine. If you want a flying priest for some reason, this would work. Next we have the Turin Shah. Again, this has the 100 leadership. These ones are priests, so they could get your bless out. Otherwise, the same basic stats we've been looking at. Do note that these are wearing a crown and not an actual helmet, so just keep that in mind. But again, perfectly fine. Maybe you care about getting somebody who can help with the blessing. This would be pretty nice. 240 gold is quite expensive, especially compared to this guy for 150, but they would work just fine. The Carapan. Carapan is our base mage priest for the heat. These are fire 1, priest 1, and they have a 100% chance to get 1 of air, death, or blood. So we do have some decent blood searching capabilities here. And we do have the possibility to get fire blood cross pathing. For 9 research, it's going to cost you 56 gold per year, which is quite efficient. But do note you need to be in the heat to be recruiting these guys. The Ath Raven. This is the base cold mage. Again, fire 1, priest 1, and a 100% chance to get air, water, astral on them. 9 research for 56, so the same efficiency level as the previous guy. Needs to be cold to be recruited. Zautar. Zautar is the kind of mid-range cold priest. Fire 1, air 1, water 1, priest level 2, and a 100% chance to get fire, air, water, and astral. These guys, I feel they suffer from that. I'm really wide in a lot of low stuff, and none of that low stuff has great cross-pathing. I'm not in love with these guys. 13 research for 118 is efficient, and it is faster to get more research, even if it's not as efficient. These could be an okay choice for researchers if you got a decent amount of money. Daster, this is our mid-fire mage. Fire, death, blood, priest level 2, 100% chance of fire, air, death, blood. So we do have decent blood access here, but no special blood spells or anything, unfortunately. Again, I would probably be looking at devils as my summon thing, but maybe even just like some imps in combat wouldn't be the worst thing ever. We do have other flyers, so the imps flying in the back could just help bolster those numbers. That can be kind of nice for that. Do note, 60 leadership and including some magical and undead leadership, so again, demon leading. Area Seraph. This is one of our big boys. Do note, you must have cold scales. You can't have neutral. There's been multiple times where this slow to recruit mage, I've been on turn 2 of my slow to recruit, temperature scales have gone to neutral, and it cancels my recruitment. Big frustrating. They are also old, and they are not sacred, so we can't really fix that. But for 310 gold, 2 resources, slow to recruit, you get a guaranteed Air 3. Air 3 is good enough to pull up Storm without any externals. We have Water 1, Astral 1, and a 100% chance to get Fire, Water, and Astral, and a 10% chance of Death and Blood. So pretty strong mage here, and that's not a horrible price for an Air 3 mage. He's a flying Air 3 mage, does also have shock resist and cold resistance. Shame he's that old, and there's nothing we can really do about that. That being said, though, this is nice for our aim type spells. We can communion him into something else. Thunderbolts, storms, lightnings. A competent combat mage for sure. His fire equivalent, the Turin Sorcerer, is very similar, but has Fire 3, Death 1, Blood 1, 100% chance of air, death, blood, and a 10% chance of water and astral. So they've been teaching each other a little bit in their spare time. I like these guys quite a bit. I find fire magic a little bit easier to use than air magic, although air magic has the benefit of storm stuff. Here, remember, we can, of course, summon firepower up to 4 pretty easily. That's some pretty big fire damage spells that we can do. Also, fire arrows relatively easily. If you get the blood guy, he could summon in your devils just right off the bat. Do note, these guys have a heat aura of 6. That can be a little bit dangerous. Be careful where you're situating them in combat, especially if you have non-heat resistance guys near them. You don't have cold, right? Yeah, you don't have cold aura. So, interesting. Again, old, and I think he's even worse. Yeah, he is even worse than his buddy. So, not sacred again. We're going to have a lot of old dudes around, is what that's telling us. Finally, we have our sacred leader, the Xaeden Spabed. This is a cap only. He is sacred, but not a priest. That's really annoying. I really wish this guy had a priest. So it's going to be hard to get a blessing for your flying sacreds with the heat guys. It just is. So somebody else is going to have to come with and help bless. They do have 100 leadership, which is nice. 245 gold, 65 resources, 1 recruitment point. So in theory, you could get 3 of these guys per turn. But do note, they are 2 sacred points each. Have the fire resistance, wasteland survival, mountain survival, dark vision, and skilled rider. Same mount we've had. Again, note, no fire resistance, unfortunately. I like them. They're fine. It's a darn shame that you can't just have this guy and a few of these guys on bodyguard and have them get blessed by him. It's really annoying. So you're going to probably be looking at trying to get one of these guys, probably like maybe an Athraven, maybe an Area Shah to do the blessing. Either way, it's going to be annoying that you need them to come in and do the bless. And even if you crafted a bottle or a flask of holy water, that's only going to bless him and not any of the Xaedens that are with him. So really annoying there. I really wish that had a priest level. As an example of why this can be really annoying. So in this game, my pretender has cold 1. I was trying to do the little dual thing a little bit. So here's an example of, these are my cold units here that I can recruit in the cold. We're cold 1 right now. And then all of my fire mages have been turned off, including this leader right here. So we can still get the base guy, but we can't get the priest one. So this can be really annoying. Let's flip this. If this was heat scales, these 5 guys would be not recruitable, and these 5 would be. Again, we can't get our Xaedens here, but we could get the ice-clad ones. So keep that in mind. I think the game wants you to play both, obviously, but mechanically, I just don't like it. I think you really want to choose heat or cold, or you want to plan on doing something that's going to make your capital permanently one or the other, even if the rest of your territory switches. And this does apply elsewhere. So if we go over here, you can see I can't get my fire guys because my Dominion Cold 1 has spread over here. Whereas before I was able to get, I think, 1 or 2 heat guys out of this before my scales caught up with me. And we are probably going to want to go really high Dominion because we're going to want our sacreds, especially if you want the heat guys. So one thing you could think about doing, and kind of what I plan to do in this game, you can put up an Eternal Pyre, which is +2 heat scales, which will pretty much keep my capital warm or neutral, and I would stop going down into the cold. But that has its own set of issues, possibly. So in that case, we could get the cold mages elsewhere, but that pretty much locks us out of getting the cap-only cold mage once we get that up and running. So we would no longer be able to get the area seraphs. So if we wanted to get these, we would get them in the early game, and then we would switch over to heat guys. I do find that kind of interesting, and it's a darn shame if you don't end up ever getting these guys. You'd like to get at least one, because then he could bolster up to an Air 4 And then with that air 4, he could make air boosters, which would be helpful for other units possibly, and just to do other big air things. So I don't know. That kind of is what it is on that. For our profit, this is another hard one. If you're going heat and you could do it on a Xeoden spa bed, I think that would be the best profit, frankly. If you're going cold, maybe we go with one of the leader type guys. Maybe we go with a heavy cav guy. We don't have a great army for expanding, so maybe you just do it on your initial. I'm pretty sure we start with a Python Salar. So we have good choices, but at the beginning of the game, we're kind of pressed for time. Expansion's not the best. We start with, I believe it's some of these two. So we get the Turin infantry and the heavy infantry, but not a huge number of them. So having that profit with them is a huge power spike. So I'm reluctant to say hold off for the better chassis. Later on, when my profit inevitably dies, I would probably switch to one of the heavier units, maybe leaning towards map move, just to have that mobile profit capability. National items and spells. As for national items, we have one national item, and it's a good one. At Construction 3, we can make the Crown of the Shah. Very interesting, relatively unique, no pun intended, helmet here. So, start of battle spell Fanaticism. So, at the beginning of combat, whoever's wearing this just casts Fanaticism. That's already pretty interesting. Fanaticism is the battlefield-wide Sermon of Courage. That's nice. Putting this on gives you priest level 1. Okay, so now you can make a profit go up to priest level 4. That's pretty cool. Gives them inspirational 150 leadership, magic leadership, undead leadership. Interesting. You can only put this on Shah, so you can't put this on just anybody. So do keep that in mind if you plan on making these. It's also cannot be removed. Requires fire 1, air 1, and it's very cheap to make. However, if you read the fine print, you can only make one of these at a time. If the wearer of it dies, the crown is destroyed and you have to make a new one. On the other hand, nobody else can capture this from you, so that's rather nice. Overall, I would definitely make this item. That's just a free fanaticism spell at the beginning of combat. That's perfectly fine. And then you could put this on, somebody who's doing something else, and he could just get that for free. So pretty cool little item here. I definitely would think about making that. For other items, we have the ability to do air, death, blood, fire, and water, and astral. So all those low-level items, especially that you always love, alquils, jars of fire, water-breathing rings, attack rings, fire resist, cold resist, lots and lots of good stuff, I would say, there. Same thing with armor. Just the low-level stuff isn't terrible, and you can get that out relatively easily. Weapon-wise, that gives you lots of options on what you would want to use, possibly. Very, very nice. I would say one thing that you definitely want to think about is an amulet of missile protection for anybody who can't do air magic. This will help keep you safe from those crossbows. So it requires air magic 2 and costs 10 air gems, but if you can get one of these, I think you're going to be pretty darn happy with that. For magic, we do have several different spells. We have some of the Caelum line of summons. So in Conjuration, heard of elephants, tigers, and buffalo. We have no native nature and no native nature mages, so you're probably not doing those. Going up to Conjuration 5, we have the Call Aruni, the Yazatas, the Devas, the Jahi. At 6, we have Celestial Yazad, the Yata. At 7, we have Pravishi. At 8, we have Amesha Spinta and Greater Devas. Let's take a look at all those. That was a whole list rattled off there. So a lot of these guys come from the same summon spell, but it'll give you one of them each time you cast it. Now do note, while we do have Native Astral, we only have Native Astral 1, maybe we could get 2. Some of these spells go up to needing 5. So we have Native Astral Pearls, but we're probably not going to be able to get up to casting that unless you start with an Astral Pretender. The fire versions of all those spells were a little bit better off because we could get a fire 4 or fire 3 along with the death or astral stuff. But again, not super duper easy. These are all the different unique guys you can get from those summons. They're great. They do give you more magic. So here's some Earth 3 guy. Here's a Nature 5 guy. These ones come off the Spinta summons. This will allow you to do Mother Oak. And with that, then you're often running into nature stuff. Nice high fire guy. Can be rather good, but again, in late age, the chances of you getting most of these off are pretty low. But look at this. These are much more usable ones, in my opinion. These are the lower end stuff. A Jahi, for example, is a Dream Seductress. Now, do note all the Deva type units, they are like demon types and they like chaos. We are probably going order 1 because if we don't, we're not going to have enough recruitment points to get most of our troops. So unfortunately, most of them are not going to be particularly useful because they're going to be debuffed in our order things. These, however, would be fine because we could use them as spies and Dream Seductresses. That would be fine. The Yata, if you got one of these, you'd be happy enough. It's a perfectly competent mage. Deva of Frost and Snow, again, perfectly fine if you did get those. Yazad. Yazads are pretty nice, I would say. I believe the summon for them is 3 Astral, I want to say. And you get a couple of them. Sacred, they have Awe, they have light, shock resistance, cold resistance, they're magic beings, they're flying, and they have storm immunity. Pretty happy with these, I would say. That spell is... Find them again. Yeah, Yazataza is Astral 2. 12 Astral Pearls. That one is pretty affordable, as is the Aruni. As is the Devas and Jahi. But beyond those, I honestly am struggling to see you be able to afford any of that. The Arai, this is a Water 2 Mage. Maybe that could be useful. They have Underwater Regen. They have Awe. They are disease healers. I'll definitely give them that. We do have old men, so if you could get at least 1 or 2 of these to hang out where the old dudes are and keep those diseases off them, that's pretty useful. Beyond those magics in Thaumaturgy, we have Parting of the Soul and Call of the Drugvat. Parting of the Soul, we don't have a easy, reliable death air mage, so a little eh. Parting of the Soul itself is a nice spell. It's range 30. It has 100 precision, so you're going to hit. 40 fatigue cost, does paralyze, which is armor negating, magic resistance negates. And when you hit them with that, then it gives you 3 Blackhawks. So if you do get a guy who's like a death, I think you'd end up with like a death 1 or 2, and then they have some air. You can spam this out, especially if you get the death 2, so it's only 20. And you can just get lots of Blackhawks, which are just good distraction units. That being said, this isn't super available to us, and it's okay. At 7, Call of the Drugvent, 15 Death Gems, and you need a Death 4, Fire 1, so that's a lot of work to get to this. This is range 4 Ritual, and it gives you, this is an attack that releases Destructive Spirits. I've never cast this in all honesty. These type of remote spells are pretty garbage. Maybe if you're fighting somebody who's only putting 1 PD in or has 1 PD, that would be okay. But 15 Death Gems, I mean, frankly, I'm pretty sure I could find something better to do with 15 Death Gems than that. Beyond those, I want to call it specifically an enchantment. At enchant 6, I think the Eternal Pyre is very interesting. This is the gem generating ritual spell. You need a fire 6 to be able to cast it and 80 fire gems. We have 1 fire gem income normally, and remember, every temple gives us a fire gem, so we're guaranteed to be able to get the gems for this. This one increases the temperature and dispels darkness in the province where it's cast. The temperature increase is +2. So if you went with the cold 1, this would make you a heat 1. So in the coldest parts of winter, you could get down to neutral or maybe even cold 1, but for the rest of the year, you're going to be solidly into heat. So I think that is one option. And even if you go heat, I think I would probably do this just to guarantee you stay in heat and you're not bouncing down to neutral or cold and messing up your recruitment. So I think this is a really important spell, but it is fire 6. So you're really not going to be able to natively do this. I mean, yeah, you could look at empowering, but yada yada, but I think you're going to want a pretender if you want to go this route. If you do go this route, I would probably rush it. 20 fire gems is nothing to sniff at. If I got 20 fire gems, Drakes would be an option. There's not a ton of actual good things outside of Drakes, unfortunately. I was really looking hard, but I think you're looking at a lot of combat magic, and you also probably want to go for a lot of remote like fires from afar type attacks and really leverage that amount of gems to do things like that. Beyond that, an enchantment also gives you fire arrows and fire resistance, and you would get those on the way. So again, kind of leaning into that idea that maybe those composite bows that have the fire arrows on them could be pretty handy. This also gives us the true shot warriors. So this is the extra aim. Would really help the cavalry out and would turn the area composite bows into very accurate bowmen. So that would be pretty darn nice. This also gives us things like Fire Shield and I believe, yeah, Gift of Flight for maybe flying elephants. Could be kind of funny. Thaumaturgy, you probably want Thaume 1 at least, just so you can do some very light communion work. That might be throw some water astrals into a communion so they could do some quickness for you. Maybe something like that. This also could be useful for the Battle Fury line, just to buff up your melee troops. So our melee troops are good, and that would just be a bonus, but, you know, better than nothing. Construction, we mentioned that before. Lots of good stuff there. We do have some thug ability, so if you want to do thug stuff, then you could do it there. We could do lightless lanterns. If we get our blood hero or we do some blood searching, we could do imps. We can do owl quills. So lots of research bonuses could be gotten out of here. Evocation, I think in Evo, we're looking at air and fire for the most part. Things like Fireball, Lightning Bolt, Thunderstrike, all really nice. But I think you could even go bigger. We could do things like Fire Cloud. We could do things like Breath of the Desert against enemies to get rid of their cold scales. Falling Fires is very available to us. And if we use the troops that have the fire resistance, this is pretty safe for friendly fire. It's armor piercing, but not armor negating. So we have relatively good armor and then add on 10 or 15 fire resistance, and you're relatively immune to the friendly fire damage from that, which is great because they certainly love to wreck our own troops. Fire from afar is here. Fire 4 is not super duper common, but we're going to have a lot of fire gems, so we could definitely get there. Flame Eruption, of course. We could go all the way up to Firestorm. 6 AP, whole field damage. Definitely make sure you have your fire resistance troops if you're going to be using this, but we definitely could do that. It's not even that expensive once you get there. Can be quite battle winning if you get that far. Alteration. Alteration is another good one, especially for the air buffs, I would say. So Air Shield, Protective Winds, Mist. If you're getting outshot, Mist will just help lower the precision of everyone on the field. That's perfectly fine. We don't really have any easy access to Earth, so that's a little bit out. Body Ethereal, though, we have some access to Astral. I definitely think it's worth it, especially if you want to go the hold and fire on those heavy cav units. Body Ethereal is just so good to get out and on things. Lacerating Winds, Mist Form, another pretty good one to get your army with. Arrow Ward, if you don't want to storm but you do want some protection, Arrow Ward's your man. And we have Air 3s that we could just recruit. So for one air gem, we could give Air Shield 80 to 20 plus of our troops. Very, very nice. Storm, of course, again, we could just natively cast this with our Air 3s. 2 air gems or maybe 3 just so they don't pass out, and you have yourself a Storm. Really nice. I would say those are the main ones. And then Conjuration, of course, we do have Air 3s and Fire 3s reliably. So things that can make use of those are pretty nice. So air elementals, especially if you're going to go the Storm route, Fire elementals, and if you're using the fire resistant troops, you don't have to worry about that heat aura so much. Nest of Salamanders. Nice just to get some more bodies on the field. We're going to be kind of a low troop count. We just have like quality over quantity stuff. And this just gets you a lot of bodies on the field. Flame Drakes, one of the scariest things to see when they're on the field. And with some fire resistance, we could do the strategy of firing through our own troops relatively well. Air Elementals full size. We could do summon Springhawks. Springhawks are really, really nice for being able to do blood hunt patrolling. Very cheap, very effective at that. Contact Draconians. This is a nice summon. You get a Draconian Chief and 30 Draconians. Good units, and we can just natively cast that relatively well. So definitely going to want to search up those air gems for sure. Flame Snakes is probably our other option. If you don't want to go with Drakes, Flame Snakes or Flame Spirits, but we already can do Fire 3 mages, so that's okay. But the Flame Snakes are pretty nice. You get 10 plus of them. If you do go with a Pretender who can do Eternal Pyre, you're looking at 6. So you would get like 14 of these a cast for 8 fire gems. These are those same snakes that we see a lot of times on level 3 thrones. They're pretty good. They're pretty good. They do kind of like to get some protection buffs, but maybe we could like misform them or something. Yeah, those are pretty acceptable. Overall, we have pretty good magic, although a little awkward because depending on the temperature that you get, then you're either going to go air or you're going to go fire, or you're going to awkwardly try to go both. So that can be a little bit fiddly. But outside of that, I would say our magic is pretty darn good. All right, let's bring all that together. Late Age Rahga has a good troop lineup, unfortunately missing crossbows, but we have the ability to buff both air and fire buffs on our composite bows, so it's not the worst. Like, we probably have the best range that isn't crossbows in Late Age, if that makes any sense. We have good heavy cavalry. We have two different flavors of Flying Sacred, one of which basically requires you to be in cold, one of which is going to be very low numbers because they require 2 sacred points to recruit, but what you get for that is really, really powerful. We have decent mages, decent, efficient researchers. Overall, really good. I think you have to make a decision on how you're going to handle temperature scales, and whatever you choose there is going to drastically change how the game plays. We do need a lot of recruitment points. We do need a lot of resources. So you're probably locked into Order 1, Production 2 at bare minimum. And then your temperature scale, depending on the flavor you want, which does get you some design points, I will note. And then paying for that with everything else. I don't think that the Zealdans are as good as they used to be, and that the days of hell blessing these ridiculously, I don't know if they're still here. The fact that at best you could get 5 of these per turn, that makes me pretty sketch on that. I think they're perfectly good. I think they're perfectly fine. I just don't know if they're hell bless available. We don't have good enough summons of other sacreds or a recruit anywhere sacred to bolster that up. But I do like them, and I do think that the heat ones are definitely the way to go. Pretender and scale design. For our design, remember we have a turmoil limit of +1. We also suffer half as much penalty from extra heat or cold. So we actually like it to be neutral, weirdly enough. And then it's going to be half as much. So if we went fire 2, it would be the same penalty as being in fire 1, or heat 1, excuse me. So keep that in mind. I think I don't know. I'm so torn on that. I like the idea of playing with the dual nature, but I also think it's probably better just to pick one or the other. Looking at our chassis choices, pretty decent choices here, I would say. Starting in Dom 1. Of note here, we do have the Great Warlock. He's only 80 points. He comes in at Blood 1, and he does have Adept Crossbreeder, so that could be a thing, maybe. Overall, he's fine. We also have the Arch Seraph. He's only 70 points. That is getting down there to, like, I believe the absolute cheapest Pretender anywhere is like 60. So he is like getting down there. Just an Air 1 dude. So you have 2 really cheap options if that's what you want to go. Great Sage, I think, is also a pretty decent option. We are missing magic weapons on our sacreds, although we do have other options for magic weapons. So I'm a little less like, oh, I have to have that. And we do have Astral available, so we could fluff our Zealdans with Body Ethereal, so we don't need that Bless. But if you did want an Astral Bless, or maybe you want those Astral Summons at Astral 5. So Astral 5, he just takes like magic weapons, just something real cheap. As a Wake Researcher, gets you off and running. Moving up to Dom 2, one of the few places that I actually think a couple dragons are good. Well, they're okay. Unfortunately, both options still bring the Sloth, and that hurts a lot. I do not like that. I really think that you want Production 3, and I would love to go, or excuse me, Production 2. I would love to go to Production 3. I don't believe we have a chassis that lets us do that, unfortunately. That being said, if you wanted to go for like Fire 3, a Fire Dragon could get you there. That's some extra design points that basically guarantees you're always going to be in heat, and the penalty for that isn't that bad. And ditto with the cold, if you wanted to go the cold route. Now remember, our temples give us fire gems, though. I really lean towards Fire Rahga. That means we could do Fire Drakes with our excess fire gems. So, I don't know. I really lean that route. And do remember that a Fire Dragon himself is a Dragon Master, which would make your Drakes even more efficient on summoning them in. if you didn't go that route. Remember, we get that turmoil +1. So if you take an order guy, you could go up to order 2 that way. So that gives them a little bit more interest than you might otherwise have in them. An expander isn't the worst thing ever, or a combatant type guy to protect yourself. We're going to look at a Scorpion King build that I think is okay. But these other guys could be interesting. Remember, if you want to do the Eternal Pyre, you need fire 6. So picking somebody who starts with some fire would make that a lot cheaper. Like this guy right here, if all you cared about was the fire, you can get that. We could get that. Let's say we went something like that. Okay, there you go. That's playable. 6 Dominion, Order 1, Production 2, Heat 2. That is going to make your capital Heat 4, but remember, we only take half penalty, so it'd be the same as Heat 2. You could switch this up a little bit, get him a little bit of extra Astral or something. You can make something work there. Going up to Dom 3s, we have a bevy of Titans. I'm not the biggest fan of any of these. Again, if you wanted to go super duper cheap, Solar Disc, Fire 3 would cost you almost nothing. He is like dirt cheap. Maybe with that version, maybe you go like extra there. I don't know. You could make something out of that. I don't love that chassis. I really wish he had a body slot. Beyond those, some people swear by the Devi of Strength. I'm a little leery on that. You do have a mount that does have fear on it, so that's kind of interesting. Moving up to Dom 4s. We don't get Monolith. I really do wish we got Monolith. Our Sacreds do like large. So if you went with something like this, maybe we could get to large. In fact, I'm going to show you a build of one of these guys, so I won't do it here. But yeah, 250 points is a little expensive. You're probably going dormant there. We have the Golden Idol for 130. He's pretty darn cheap. You're probably not going to max out Fortune anyways. So having an extra Misfortune scale doesn't really matter. You could make something really cheap with that. You could go something like, I don't know, Hard Skin and some Blood Surge or something. Oh, we went Blood Surge, Hard Skin, or maybe we don't go Blood Surge. Maybe instead we actually go Enchanted Blood. That gives us since we don't have any regen capability, and we can already pay for that. And then, yeah, look at that. Maybe we go hard. Actually, maybe we go Awake. Okay, here you go. An Awake guy with Hard Skin and Enchanted Blood for your Zealdens. You could get 4 of them per turn. This, I don't hate. We're not going to be able to spend those last 10 points. I may actually even just save this guy. What a name. We'll call him Little Llama after that crazy name. Little Llama. That could be a thing. All right, let's actually look at a couple that I created past Little Llama there. All right, first one is Cork. This is a wooden Colossus. Cork here went with larger and unbreakable. Our Griffins are size 8 normally. This takes them to 9. You get just a lot of stats from large. 30% extra HP, 3 strength, -1 defense skill, but we're already not good at that, and some extra map move. This also applies to all but the big cap only mages, just have some extra HP, which will help with their disease old manness. That's pretty nice. And unbreakable. So we're going to have big sacks of HP that are very strong and damaging, and they're hard to put afflictions on. Just kind of a good generic. This also means if you do end up with some of the ice-clad ones, that's not useless on them. So I think that's fine. He is set up that he can do the Eternal Pyre for us. In addition, he actually has a little bit of nature. So he can help us get some nature crafting, maybe do some light nature summons. He can do a Thistle Mace. A little bit of blood here. Again, like Armor of Twisting Thorns would be a possibility. Bloodstone would be a possibility. So pretty good. He is dormant, so he's going to come in. You're definitely going to want to craft him gear. He's only got 13 protection, and notice we didn't take Hard Skin here, so he really wants armor. And he is going to be, I believe this is not including that. Oh, it is including that. So he's size 9. So big beefy boy. His HP is actually not that high, but remember it's higher inside of high domain. Next one, Hottest Scorpion Man. I did do a cold version of him. I actually think the heat one's better, so I just flipped the scale here. This is a Fire 6, Earth 6 Dormant, 6 Domain, Order 1, Production 2, Heat 1. Now you could argue maybe we go up to Heat 2. and that gets us an extra design point, and then we can, or an extra scale, and then we can take off the misfortune. That may be worth our time. And doing that, I feel like those scales are fine. He takes Unbreakable, Unbreakable, and Hard Skin. So for him, that takes him to 27 protection. I will say in a couple different test games, he died to crossbows. 27 protection is not high enough. Even 30 is not high enough because those crossbows are going to knock you down to 15 and then take 15% of that. So now you're down to like 13, and now you're getting hit for 5 to 9 damage. He only has 57 HP, modified by 10% per candle wherever he's fighting, and he does not have a body slot. I do feel that's a little unfortunate for this chassis. I really feel like he should get either chest or a barding, one or the other, or both. It just feels like this is like a remnant from previous DOMs. I really think he should get a chest piece. Outside of that, I do think you probably want to make him a brace or protection ASAP, just to get a little extra protection on there, and then whatever else. I will note, he is large enough at size 8 that if you give him a length 3 weapon, it becomes a length 4 weapon. That's really nice because that will let you try to repel lances, which is another thing that pretenders do not love to experience. So that would be an option there. So those are my thoughts on the pretenders. I think that almost everybody, you're basically locked into Order 1, Production 2, and then everything else is to taste. I don't think you go ever true neutral on your heat scales. I think at bare minimum, you go cold 1 or heat 1, and you lean that direction, or you go deep. You go fire 2 or 3 or cold 2 or 3, and just guarantee you stay in the heat scales that you like. I'm really curious to know what other people like on this nation. In the past, it definitely, I believe, was fire. The Zealdans were just insane. One of the best sacreds in the entire game. I think they've definitely been brought down in Dom 6. But I'd be curious to see what other people have really enjoyed on that. In conclusion, Late Age Rahga Dual Kingdom is a very interesting nation. It has a unique mechanic with the temperature scales changing the commanders and sacreds that you can recruit. They have a okay national summons that are kind of sort of doable, especially if you help it out a little bit with a pretender. But even outside of that, you can do a few of them. They have pretty good troop lineup, including some of my favorites, which is like heavy cav and heavy infantry. If only we had some crossbows, it would be perfect. We have flying troops, though, including some pretty good flying troops. So the hammer and anvil tactics are alive and well. We have, depending on what temperature scales, good mages that can do things that they're trying to do. Our research is efficient enough that it's not a major pain point. We have the full citadels of the age, so no problems there. While our temples being 1,200 gold sucks quite a bit in the early game, I think most nations, if you said you can either have 600 gold temples or you can have a temple that gives you a free gem, but we're going to double the cost, I think most people would take the double cost gives me a gem. There's a few nations that would really benefit from that quite a lot. Overall, I think this is a good nation. I don't think this is at the bottom in any way, shape, or form, although it's definitely a little bit of a finesse nation, I would say. It's not the most straightforward. Overall, I enjoyed my test games quite a bit. You can see I played this one kind of deep. I'm in a 3 or 4 way war in this one. It's been pretty interesting. Yeah, for sure. All right, leave whatever comments you have for me, especially if you have an interesting build for here. This one feels very open to interpretation due to that temperature mechanic. If you haven't already, leaving a like on the video helps me a ton. If you're not subscribed to the channel, I hope I've earned your subscription today. I'd love to see you in the comments or join me live in the chat. And if you want to continue to support the channel, you can always leave a super thanks on a video or VOD. You could join me live for a super chat or consider becoming a member or Patreon. As a member of the channel here on YouTube, you get early access to the videos that I'm working on. Usually that's been Dominion's pre-games, but it could be other things that I'm working on at the time. I also have a Discord that everyone's free to join, but if you're a member of the Patreon or member on YouTube, you can link those two programs together, and that will get you into the file channel where I drop things like Dominion's maps, Turn 0 from Shadow Empire, building blueprints from things like House of Legacy, and that's going to expand as we play other games that have shareable files. Either way, Rahga was an enjoyable one. I hope you've enjoyed the pregame, and I look forward to seeing you guys on stream. We are kind of come down to the home stretch of pregames, having completed almost every nation in the game. All right, guys. It's one of those days that you might need your coat or you should have worn shorts. You'll have to tell me in the comments which it is. I'll see you on stream. Babble out.